Coogs house. It's not quite Christmas in New York, but Houston just got a really great gift for fans. Was it the best? Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs, daily podcast about your Houston Cougars, and a hoops bonus episode. It is kicking off Big 12 football this weekend, but I want to give you a little basketball content today. Today's show is brought to you by our buddies over at FanDuel. More on that fun later. I want to talk at first in this bonus episode about Houston's big Christmas time game in Newark being official. We'll talk about that in a second. And I'll talk about what it means to have so many big-time non-conference games that are also non-Fertitta Center games. But first, as we mentioned, Houston, Arkansas, Old Southwest Conference days are back, and they're happening in Newark, which is neither south nor west, but it is an exciting place to play. Presumably, it's having the Prudential Center where the New Jersey Devils play hockey. But this is officially in the books now for December 20th. It's a big deal. Houston playing Arkansas. Calipari and Sampson is fun hoops. That's a big deal for fans. It's also in a trio of games with CBS Sports that are not happening all in the same city, but CBS will be featuring Houston and Arkansas along with North Carolina and Ohio State, and a Kentucky game in there as well. Kentucky playing St. John's all on the same day. As far as other college hoops go, you've got Duke and Tech and Auburn and Purdue. It is a busy slate of big-time college basketball that could not be big enough to not include Houston. Like, you got to include Houston in these things these days, and that's a cool part of the program. Another cool part of the program is it is truly two Hall of Fame caliber coaches in Calipari and Sampson squaring off against one another. Dramatically different kind of coaches as far as what they've done and how they do things, but certainly both in that Hall of Fame kind of, the story, the statues are all going to continue long after their time in institutions are done. Now, the question people have is, how did this game end up in Newark when it was initially leaked by John Rothstein is happening in Brooklyn? That, I do believe, based on some DMs around the folks, it does sound like was a goal at some point to get into Barclays in Brooklyn. But on Saturday, the 20th, there's also a 4-team blue blood women's basketball deal happening. Barclays being where they also play the Liberty games and stuff like that. 4 women's basketball games, including UConn and Iowa and others. And so that event was there. The NBA schedule came out, and you couldn't really move that to either day before or after and stay in New York City. And then you also couldn't really move the Houston game around either and stay in New York City. So they moved it to Newark. And ultimately get to play in Newark and still go showcase the Northeast, showcase the greater tri-state, greater New York City and all that. People likely would have flown into Newark, if not JFK, to go to this game anyway. So it's really not a lot of different trip in that instance. I do think, if we're being in our heart of hearts honest, that a big part of this was it sounds like there might have been some Arkansas tickets sold already. And or at least some what the league might have led to, like some Arkansas people buying tickets and trips, and so you kind of had to stay in the region. That's total hearsay. That might be out the window. We'll see. But Houston, Arkansas, Newark, New Jersey, and I will say I appreciate this as a neutral site game that is not in the Toyota Center. We're trying to keep as few games in TC as possible because you want to keep that as a non-home court the best you can, with Houston now officially going to be able to play in the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 games there, potentially, if they get to pick their fate as a 1 seed. So we'll see how that goes. Look, I think the biggest thing on this game for Houston, we'll get into the matchup as it stands in a very periphery start of the season, like it's September kind of way. But Houston kind of had their schedule get screwed in the conference matrix. The way it worked out, if you just directly flipped who they play at home and whom they played away based on last year's end of season net rankings, they'd almost double the quad one games, right? And that's just by happenstance. The right matrix is the matrix. You rotate through it how you rotate through it. It's no one's fault, but Houston will have less quad one in conference games based on last year's results, which are, again, old at this point, than they would have had otherwise. And so you're looking for these kinds of big games, getting to hold on to this one. This one will be a quad one game. Arkansas is going to be a good program. Calipari is a good coach. They will continue to be a top tier program under him. And it's a neutral site game. So it will definitely be in the top 60 or 70 to make sure this feels like a quad one kind of game. It's a fun neutral site atmosphere. You're just outside New York City. If you're making the trip up, it's a fun ordeal. As far as the basketball goes, though, you know, when he came over from Kentucky, Calipari brought a couple of big time players with him. DJ Wagner, Karter Knox, now veterans. They were young guys when he left Kentucky, came over with him, and now are veterans on this Arkansas team. And that sticks out when you look at a roster that has 7 freshmen on it. 7 freshmen highlighted by a couple of 5-stars in Darius Acuff and Malik Thomas. Darius Acuff's a point guard that had Houston's attention as well. Acuff ultimately picked going to Arkansas, now admittedly at Houston, with Kingston Fleming and Isaiah Harwell both coming in the same class. And then you also have Miles Uzan not leaving. Like, he would have had trouble finding the floor this year. He will probably play a lot as a freshman at Arkansas. At one of the 2 guard spots. Malik Thomas will rotate in a lot as well. He's a 6'3" guard from Atlanta, played quasi-professionally in OTE. And then the big guy, Paulo Semedo, is going to be interesting to watch him match up with JoJo Tugler. Semedo is 7'1" at Orlando, but big time. High-end 4-star. Was surprised was 4, not 5 kind of guy out of Orlando for them. I don't know how much Calipari in Kentucky you watched. Last year was his first year at Arkansas, so give them some slack on that. I would anticipate, even if they've got 7 freshmen, Calipari is going to make those dudes not look like freshmen by December. And frankly, playing them December 20th is kind of a danger zone area as far as like where they're going to be in their development. That might be about the time, based on how Calipari's teams have gone in the past, they're like kind of getting it or sinking or understanding, like they've been thrown in the fire enough times and now they're, dodging coals. Like, that's kind of where they're at now. FanDuel does have Houston at plus 1,000 to win the college basketball national championship next season. That's the second best odds in all of college basketball, Purdue being first, with it being in Indianapolis this year, right? Arkansas is just 12th at plus 2,500 with 7 freshmen, right? At 12th, that puts them like right behind BYU with everything AJ DeBonsa, right behind Tech, right, and all the stuff they returned with McCaslin, JT Toppin, that whole nine. Puts them just ahead of Kansas and Arizona as far as who Houston will see this season that you can consider in the same vein. This is like one of those games in a neutral site in Newark, New Jersey. And while you may, I like the Sopranos as much as the next guy, but the idea of playing in Newark is an interesting one. It's an exciting thing for the program from a lot of standpoints. And I like when it's unfortunately all behind us, and we've talked about the Sampson days, and Kelvin's won his titles, and Kellen's won his titles, and we're on to statues are up, and jerseys are hung up, and banners are raised, and all that. I do think a matchup between Calipari and Sampson's the kind of thing you potentially could be talking about years and years and years from now, right? Because in their own ways, they're both coaches that defined this era in the last 20 years in so many regards. I mean, Calipari, between what he did at Memphis and then Kentucky and now Arkansas, but Sampson and what he did at Oklahoma, and then before the Indiana stuff happened, and then obviously rebuilding his career and the program at Houston, like the Phoenix from the ashes kind of metaphor, right? All these things have really like been big time storylines over the last 2 decades, and now they're running into each other in Newark. Obviously, yes, we remember the Tyler Hero Kentucky game, and I don't want to talk about a whole lot more than anybody else, but that is kind of the last like image of this coaching matchup. So maybe you get to kind of relive that in a good way with Sampson getting one over on Calipari to get him back for that in Newark as well. Now, I want to talk about the schedule in the non-conference as we know it in just one second, because I think season ticket holders have a gripe, and I think they might be right. It's kind of the only complaint I have about this game, actually, is that they might be right. Before we get too far, today's show is brought to you by our buddies over at 5-Hour Energy, because it's time to fuel up and turn it up with 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. Grape, ginger, and lime flavored shot begin to bring the iconic taste of the golf course to a favorite non-alcoholic boost. Perfect for sneaking birdies or making great memories with friends. It's a hole-in-one for your energy game, whether on the course or just need a little extra push to power through your day. 5-Hour Energy Transfusion delivers the clubhouse flavor you love without ever leaving the green. Golf is all about good times with good people and good flavors. The grape ginger lime flavor of 5-Hour Energy Transfusion gives the best parts of your clubhouse to go to without ever having to leave the course or chase down the beverage cart. Now you can amp up the fun even more just by snap and enter to win a chance to a dream golf trip with any two in any golf tournament in the United States. Tee up that trip. That's visit 5hewin.com for rules and entry. No purchase necessary. Exclusive Masters tournament ends October 31st, 2025. Today's show is also brought to you by our buddies over at FanDuel, because right now football season is in full swing. We've got college football in big time action. Big 12 kicks off this Friday night with Houston and Colorado. FanDuel's make sure you're ready for kickoff with this can't miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet hits, you get $300 in bonus bets across the app. Easy to use in game, pre game, getting ready for the next game. Props, lines, everything all over FanDuel. If you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app today and visit FanDuel.com to get started. It's FanDuel.com. Place your first $5 bet. Park Rangers with Locked On Cougs here. And listen, I am excited about playing Arkansas. I'm excited they pulled this off. I'm excited this is really happening, even if it's in Newark, New Jersey. I'm excited to play Auburn and Birmingham. I'm excited to play all these big-time Power 4 programs like Syracuse and Tennessee and others in Las Vegas. I'm excited to play Florida State at Toyota Center. I think the thing people are not excited about is that none of the games are just natively played on campus. In fact, only one of them is being played in Houston. And I get that gripe. Now, I think that's also just a realistic look at where Houston is as a program. And I think that you just kind of have to, take good with the bad on that. Houston is now being shown off as a program. It is that kind of program where Big 12 dollars, TV dollars, networks want to put Houston in these situations. Houston got invited to the first Players Era Festival a year ago for that reason. Houston and Auburn struck up this deal for that reason. Houston and Florida State, Houston and Arkansas now in the CBS aspect of that deal, because Houston is the kind of basketball that deserves to get shown off, and it's finally getting its due there. That is a good thing. Recruits want to play in these big things, want to play on TV. The dollars go to your athletic program. We know that dollars are, the only thing that makes sense right now. And get that. I think that the deal is that people remember, but we had like Oregon come through Fertitta Center, right? Oh, we've had big time games come through Fertitta Center before, Alabama, a couple years ago. Like, can we get those things back? That balance is hard to strike, right? Because truthfully, I think you're going to see more of college basketball go towards this, where these non-conference matchups are being put in big stadiums, big pro-sized stadiums. Even, as we mentioned, Florida State in Houston is being played in Houston, but at the Toyota Center. Last year, Houston and Auburn was in the Toyota Center, and the year before that, you had Houston and A&M at the Toyota Center. It all lines up where, at the end of the day, they want that big pro stadium to put on events at, right? Can Houston get to the point where they're having a home game too in this? Maybe. I don't want to say no, but even schools that have been around for a lot longer, UConn plays a lot of their games in and around other major, neutral sites. St. John's, right? The same kind of thing, using New York City to their advantage. Having Toyota in your backyard in a year that is not next year would be a great aspect for not air quotes having a home game works. The deal is that it's not a home game in your season ticket package, and I totally get that gripe. I don't want to negate that gripe. I do think, though, that when you say you want to be a big time athletic program, people don't want to always admit it, and people don't want to always bite the bullet, or people want some sort of a mixture of the two. This is kind of what that looks like. It just is. For what it's worth, we're playing Auburn in Birmingham, not Auburn, right? And that's next to their. It feels like home game for them, just the same way Toyota Center should have for Houston last year, but it's not, right? And so this is the reality of the future of college basketball. It's the reality of being a big time program in college basketball. Now, this is also why Houston jumping to the Big 12 in a basketball sense. The football makes sense for itself, right? But in a basketball sense is awesome because you'll never lose those games. Those games will be home games, right? I mentioned the inverse. If you just flip flop the home and away, you get a lot of quad one games. You don't get a whole lot of quad three games in Big 12. These are all quad 1 and 2, right? And that's really, I guess, the product you're looking at here. Um, I I understand, and I saw that gripe as soon as it came. I was like, man, this couldn't be in Brooklyn. This couldn't be a part of the Madison Square Garden deal. Why couldn't we just play it at Fertitta? Why couldn't we? And I totally get the complaint, but the truth is you're kind of past that. Fertitta is a great home venue for Big 12 conference games. Beat Kansas there, beat Arizona there, beat Baylor there, beat Tech there, beat these big time national programs that are in your conference at home. That's where the fun is there. As you get that caliber, you're no longer playing East Carolina, right? These are big time basketball games coming through, um, and frankly, I think that that's what the season ticket does. And you know, if you gotta make a trip and make a roadie, we can have a segment someday talking about which roadie is the best one to go to. I think Newark. Well, I would probably stay. Let's be honest. I'd probably stay with a friend in New York, not in Newark. But I totally get figuring out like, well, I'm not going to go to Vegas every year. I got to kind of mix it up or whatever on that. So we'll see. Now, I want to get with our guys who are locked on Arkansas. I'll talk about this matchup as we get closer to it. And then, as always, I'm going to talk with Zach about locked on Auburn, about Auburn. We'll talk with people up at Syracuse and Tennessee. We got locked on. We got Florida State. We'll talk about all these different games as we get to them, obviously. But the excitement right now is that Houston, Arkansas is happening, even if it's in Newark. So thank you all for tuning into our bonus coverage of it today. Locked on Cougars, primarily Locked On podcast. Now, I'm your team every day. Go Cougs.